let's start. Okay, so today, sorry, I'm just looking at my IT stuff, IT updates. Anyways, so for today, we're going to review on some of the HTML, CSS things, and we're going to get started on the entire item. I guess before we start, then, the question is, do you remember HTML, CSS, and how to do any of that? Do you know how to make a document? Good. Do you know how to position something? All right. Okay, then do it. Make a document where there's a blue box in the middle. All right. He's like, he doesn't speak for all of us. All right. Okay. Before we start, let's go over some logistics going in. So there are some things that you should think about. Don't go crazy yet, but there are some things you should think about when we're doing the whole material. Sometimes it goes by really fast. Sometimes it goes by like when I type. Sometimes I type really fast because that means I got too hyper. Please let me know when I type too fast and slow me down. That's for sure it's going to happen. If your typing speed is really slow, like for example, we go by a 70% threshold. If 70% of the class can keep up, then I would suggest you practice on your typing a little more. There are things that you're gonna mess up on for sure. That's guaranteed. One of them is spelling, the other is capitalization and whatnot. But later on, it'll be easier when my screen is on your screen and you can follow along. The lecture is recorded, even though we don't have the software to record today. The lecture is recorded and it will be posted on your lab D2L later on if you feel like you missed something. But again, if most of you, or if just you feel like I'm going way too fast, you need to let me know, or else I'm just going to keep going. Sometimes you get really high and then you just go faster and faster and faster. And that's normal in most cases. All right. What am I doing? Okay, so in brackets, I don't know if you know about this, but you can drag the whole folder inside brackets so that you can just work on that one project alone and have that specific project open. Because what you're gonna do is you're gonna start a new document, index HTML. By dragging the whole folder in, you'll be working with that folder from that point on. And some of the items we're doing today are purely review, but based on last class, I realized probably there are some materials that you need more touch up on or have not gone extensively in, and we're gonna focus on some of those materials. So how do I make a document then? HTML document. Blah, blah, blah. Doc type? HTML? Oh, very good. Doc type exclamation. So a lot of times what we're going to do is we're going to start blank. You'll realize that it's different from probably other classes. Everything we do is from scratch up because we're building on your foundation. The more foundation that you build, the more prepared you are to modify something else later on. And you may notice a repetition of some of the material, and that's because we're trying really hard to build on your foundation. Some little logistics here and there that I want to mention is that I don't like my spacing to have 4 spaces, so I usually change it to 2. So when you look at my screen and then you realize how come the indenting is different, it's because I changed it to 2. You don't have to change it to 2. Let me show you the difference. If you have it at 2, when you press tab, it only indents 2 spaces. If you have it at 4, when you press tab, it will indent how many spaces? 4 spaces, magic, right? 2, 3, 4. I just like 2. You can do whatever you want on that. Feel free. All right, so making a center box. That's the fun part. Nah, let's do it together. Or maybe we should have a pop quiz. You know what people say? That if you're under stress, you think better. No? Pop quiz, 10% of the mark. Easy 10%, right? Review. This is a blank document. I like to say, let's start with a blank document. It means there's nothing on there, which is exactly what this is. Nothing on the screen. So, we're going to do some review today. We'll start with the most important thing for this course, which is positions. So, before we do that, let's recall how to make anything on the screen. We're going to take 4 divs on here, but we'll start with the first div. I'm going to ID it to box 1, and I'm going to put the class as boxes. What's the difference between ID and classes? And what then classes is not? Ah, okay. Huh? Okay. Good. ID is its own unique identifier, and classes is a group of items. Now, here's the tricky technical question. Can you have multiple of the same ID? Oh, of course you can. The proper answer is it's best not to. But yes, you can technically have the same ID. It just, if you try to make an application out of it, it probably will not work out well. Not probably, like 90% of the time it will not work out well. So ID should be unique to that specific item. Classes is a group of items together. All right, so we're gonna make 4 boxes. If you're wondering how did you just do that, does anyone know? If you press Command D, that duplicates the previous line. All right, let's check out our very first graphical layouts right here. Our very first 4 boxes. These are nice looking boxes. Where are my box? Is it here? Are the boxes here? Here's another interview question. Are my boxes here?
Yes.
Why is it? Why don't I see it? It doesn't have style? Oh, I guess. Okay, so inspect element should be on at all time. You've probably learned inspect last year, right? Yes? Yeah? Please let me know. So inspect will help you see everything properly, all the data that's associated and why things are looking in a certain way. In inspect, you're going to see HTML, head, body, and when we open up the body, our boxes are all there. And they have data to them, because when we click on it, we can see the data that's associated with the boxes. Down here with the style, these are the data that's associated with boxes. When we highlight it, there are 2 numbers associated with the box. 181 times 0. What's 181 times 0? What is that?
0.
Okay, all right. So, but what is this number representing, though? That's a good math right there. But what is the number representing here? What am I looking at? This is saying that this box has 181 pixels in width and 0 pixels in height. So these are useful information because remember from the lecture, we are more concerned about its data than what it looks like. We don't really care. Well, we do care what it looks like, but In reality, we need to know the data properly. What data is associated with my box right now? And it goes back to our lecture again. What's the difference between a div and a span? The default data that's associated. You notice that when I highlight a div over here, what's the default data associated with it? A block display. That's the only difference between your span and your div. The default data. So can a span be a div? Yeah. Can a div be a span? Yeah. It's just the amount of items that's on the screen. So we're going to have 4 boxes on the screen. This is how you identify these information. I'm going to use a simple sketchpad to provide you the info. For example, you might go on Photoshop or Illustrator and go, this is what I'm going to make. Something like that. How many items on the screen? 4. So that means you gotta create 4 objects on the screen. And in this case, these are my 4 objects on the screen. There's no difference if it's a div or a span or whatnot. Well, there is a slight difference, which is the default data that's associated with it. Right, so that's the idea. But more importantly, let's stylize these so that we can add more information than the default. Now, before we go on, let me just quickly reiterate this. When we're developing, every time you check something, your inspect element should be on at all. Your developer tool, I should say. Your developer tool should be on at all times. We can go to a point where we go, hey, if you could ask me a question and I don't see the developer tool on, you lose 1% of your entire grade. We can go to that point, but make sure at all times this is on, because this gives you the data of everything that's happening on screen. If you want to know what's happening, why it's happening, all the information are here. Every single piece of information. But let's stylize it. We're gonna do a in document style. You probably learned how to separate your style sheets on another file. Have you? Makes answers. What's going? Yeah, no. Right now, we're just gonna put it on the same sheet document so that we can see them properly. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna stylize our boxes with our class boxes so that they all have more than just their default data. We're gonna give it a background color of let's say bed or something like that. Bed is a great color. You'll notice I like to write colors in words. It's easy to remember. Where's my colors? What's wrong? I want my background color. Are they there? Look at the inspector. Are they there? It's there. They're all there. You can see it, right? There's new data associated to these items. So what's wrong? How come I don't see my colors at all? Yes?
Still got 0 height.
Huh?
It's 0 height.
I still have 0 height. Right? You can see the width is there. It's just as big as the stream, but there's no height. Right? So let's try. Let's add a height on there. Let's say 100 pixel in height. Wow. Don't need this anymore. And so now with each one, you can see the information has changed. More than just background color, now each one has a dimension of height. At the same time, maybe we don't want it to be as big as the screen allows. Maybe we want it to be just 100 pixel as well, so it's an actual box. And maybe we want to give a margin as well so that we can separate them and look at them. Maybe we'll do margin bottom or something like that, so that we can separate them and have a different kind of box, and so on. So now we have our awesome 4 boxes going in, each one having their own data inside. So again, I'll keep emphasizing throughout the entire term, which is that we didn't make 4 green boxes. You may think that right now. We made 4 green boxes. But in a more accurate term that you have to start thinking about is we made 4 objects on the screen that has the data 100px associated with it for its height, 100px associated for its width, and hash or pound BED associated with its background color. Because that's how you know what you can change. You didn't make 4 green boxes. You made 4 objects on the screen that has these data information inside. And you'll see that later on. But more importantly, before we go on and figure other things out, we need to learn or relearn or review the 4 important concepts of positioning. So each box is going to have its own position. What are the 4 positions? Static, fixed, relative, absolute. What's the difference? What's static? Static. What is static? If you didn't know, by default, everything on your screen is static. Okay, so let's start. Even though it's static, we're going to make sure this position is static. And nothing will change, except the information that it's static is there. The information that it's static is right there. So, the question is, what is static? If you haven't noticed the pattern of your documents by now, it goes in a certain order. It will always go from left to right and top to bottom. Static means I don't want any change to it. Everything I do will go from left to right, top to bottom. You'll notice here, the box go from top to bottom. Box 1, box 2, box 3, box 4. Then you go, well, what about left to right? Because technically, if that's the case, box 2 should be beside over here, right? And that has to do with its display. When you say it's a block display, it means they're a block that go on top of each other. If you want to change that around, you can change its display to a inline block. Then it will go from left to right, and then before you know it, if you shrink it, top to bottom, left to right, top to bottom. That's what a static position is. Everything will flow from the left to right, top to bottom. But we're not going to do inline. And that's why I say a span can be a div. Technically, what we just did over here is we overwritten its default data with our own data. You see that it's crossed out. So what's the difference between a div and a span? A piece of default information that exists. And if you overwrite that, a span can be a div, an H1 can be an H2, an H3 can be a div, and so on and so on. It doesn't matter. You can write anything. They're just objects on the screen with data inside. So that's a static position. Static is very general, left to right, top to bottom. But we're not going to do the inline block here because we want to see other things. So we're going to delete that inline block. Or if you want, you can comment it out. Let's go over commenting really quickly. Slash, star, and star slash to comment your stuff. So static only goes from left to right and top to bottom. It means you cannot change it, and that's important. You cannot change its positioning. It will always be left to right and top to bottom. Which moves on to the next position. Relative. What's relative? What's relative to the predecessor? What's the predecessor?
Like if it's body and the div is inside the body, like if position relative, it will follow the body and position itself accordingly.
Okay, so my box 2 is relative right now, right? Because it says relative. What's the difference between box 2 and box 1?
It will follow what the box is. The class.
I like the what's it called, analytical. I like the way you analyze it, which is semi-correct, which is good. So relative, in a more simplest term, is you can move this item. It's not static. You can move this item relative to the static position. So its static position is right here, right? I can move it relative to it. In static, I can't move it, but in relative, I can actually move it. For example, I can say, I want to move it from the left, move 10 pixels away, relative to its static position. If you refresh it, you'll notice that your second square moved 10 pixels from the left to the right, 10 pixels away. In the same way, you can say, I want to move 10 pixels from the top to the bottom relative to its static position. And you'll notice that it moved a little bit from the left to top relative to its static position. That's what relative is. That you can change the positioning relative to its static position. Same way with right and bottom. Left, top, right, and bottom all make sense, right? Right and bottom. Then it'll move from the right to the left relative to its position on the other side. And so on. And that leads on to the third positioning, absolute position. What is an absolute position? That's a very good answer. You're absolutely correct. I know. It says you'll get 0 on that mark.
It clears out whatever the default was. No margin at all.
So absolute means it doesn't care anymore. So if you have siblings and your absolute position, it means you don't care where you stand. You're going to be on your own. So absolute means it's no longer, its positioning no longer is relative to anything. It doesn't go with any flow. It goes exactly wherever it wants. So for example, I can go to the right side at 10 pixel and top 10 pixel. So it's going to place itself at the right side of whichever parent it's at, right and top, which gives you the third box right here. I don't care about my static position anymore. I'm going to move anywhere on my own. That's what absolute is used for. It'll be right there. It's like, screw all of you. I'm on my own. And then that leads to the final one. Fixed. What's a fixed position? It moves with the screen. That's actually a pretty correct answer over there. Fixed. The simplest way to understand fixed and the difference between absolute is think about a foreground and a background. Every time you scroll, that's the background moving. The easiest example you can kind of think of I can think of right now is in your house, You have a window. Your window is your fixed position. Because you can draw a happy face on the window, and you can move around in your house. The person looking from the outside will always see that happy face on the window. Even though in the house, things have been moving. You have been moving from left to right, up to down. That's the scrolling. You will still see that. And in a more technical term, fixed is on the viewport. That's the technical term for it. The viewport is the front side. And this is the new technology that your browsers are in, the viewport on the front side. For example, then right of 10 pixel and bottom of 10 pixel, it's an absolute position item, except it's on the viewport. It's scratched into the window. And the easiest way to understand and grasp it is if we go to our box 2 and give it a huge height. Let's say 1000 pixel in height, so that we can scroll it. You'll notice the absolute is its own thing inside the background while it's scrolling, while the fix it's in the front viewport on its own. Right? So you see this a lot. Like for example, you see it in control panels. You never notice that when you scroll a site, some things are always on the screen no matter where you scroll to. It's like, hey, I can navigate to my profile on the screen no matter where I scroll to. That's because it's fixed in the window, in the front page of your viewport. So these are the 4 major items that will be used non-stop in this course. Well, and plus a lot more. But 4 major ones. If you don't know this, you're pretty much screwed for your, 70% of the time. No. So static, relative, absolute, and fixed. Now, absolute is a little bit more tricky than that. For example, right now, absolute puts us at the top right corner, right? Let's have a box 5, and we're going to put it under box 3. Within box 3, we're going to have a box 5. And what we're going to do is we're going to associate box 5 with an absolute position as well. And this time, we're going to we'll have a background color, a different background color. Let's say DAD. And it's going to go on the left side and the bottom. Now, when we look at that, we go, well, it's an absolute position. And since it's left and bottom, it should go all the way down here at the left bottom of the screen. Right? Because it's on its own. It's like I don't care about the static position. I'm on my own. I'm going to the bottom left of the screen. But when you refresh it, you'll notice that it's not even there. And let's check out why really quickly. Oh, you'll notice it's not even there because I don't even have a width and height to it. 25 pixel and a height of 25 pixel. You'll notice that it's on the left bottom of box 3. Even though I said absolute position, it doesn't go on the bottom left side of the screen. It goes in the bottom left of box 3. Because when you say absolute, it's always absolute to its parent, to the item that it's contained in. So box 3 is 100 by 100, and box 5 is in absolute position on the bottom left of 0 pixel of box 3. But here's the tricky part. This only applies if your items are not in static position. All right. You might, well, what? Right? Because Why don't you try the following? Go to box 1 and put your box 5 there instead. Highlight your box 5 div, cut it, and paste it in box 1. Right now, in your mind, you go, this is going to go into the bottom corner of my box 1. But it's not going to. It's all the way to the bottom left down there. You see that? It's all the way to the bottom left. And why is that? Because box 1 is in a static position. You can just think of the following. Static is telling them, I don't care about anything else. I'm just there. So in order for you to put something like box 5 relative the absolute position that's associated with its parent, you have to make sure the position is not static. And by default, everything is static. So, for example, when you go on and look at something like an Instagram post or Twitter post, you notice that every one of them has like an avatar on like maybe top left or top right or whatever it is, right? That's because they're all placed absolutely in a relative div. Not a static div, but a relative div. Okay, so that's the only tricky part about absolute. So if you put it back in box 3, then it won't go to the bottom left, but it'll be going to the bottom left of your non-static div. Same with fixed, so you can try everything else, right? Like, what if it's my fixed one? Exact same thing. It will be in an absolute position based on your non-static parent covering it. So I hope this refreshes any memory that you had on this. Learned about positions last year, right?
Feels like we're learning it again here.
Huh?
Feels like we're learning it for the first time.
But you learned positions last year.
And can you please study the position of box 5, the relative one?
You want to see what it looks like if it's on box 2,
On box 3?
on box 3,
Yes.
then it will be okay.
Here, I just missed the part where you said like, it will be different if the position is static.
Box 1?
Yeah.
All right.
It depends on the parent, like.
Yeah, so box 1 is static, right? In your mind, it should go on the bottom left of this rectangle over here. But it doesn't because box 1 is static. It's static. So box 5 is all the way down to the corner over there of the body. So the body is the last item that's not static. Yeah?
Can you place other positions inside other tips?
Yeah, you can keep going. You can have, if you really want to move around, you can have a box 5 and inside a box 6 that's also a static position. So it's like a list inside this box going on and on and on and on. Make sense? So you can make like a list inside another list that's positioned in different places. So I can make 2 inline buttons in this box that's placed on the bottom left side. So you keep going, right? So like button 1, but 1, and but 2. Except the width cannot be 25 pixels. It'll have to be 100%. So 2 buttons that's placed. Well, let's not do 100%. You can't really tell, but 80% maybe? I don't know. Oops. 2 buttons that's inside the div that's absolutely placed at the bottom. And you can keep going. You can have another div and keep going. That's maybe you have another div that has a button in the top right, another div has a button in the top bottom left, and so on. Like buttons in all 4 corners. Yeah?
Is absolutely the only position that you can place within another tip?
You can do relative too. So, for example, I can have a relative div over here inside my absolutes, and then it'll be a div that's using a relative format. And static, fix is the only one. Fix your screw because it's in the front. Right. If you want to do so only use fix if you're putting it in the screen forever. If you want it to be in something else, you don't use fix. Good. Any questions on this? Any other questions on this? So we'll revisit this over and over again because we're going to make a lot of different small applications using these kinds of positioning and whatnot. But more importantly, this year, so with something new, I'm going to introduce to you a different CSS that we all as a whole feel you should learn, because we realized that you didn't probably have not learned it yet, and that is a flex display. Have you learned flex displays? All right, let's do it. It'll be reiterated over and over. But what we cannot spend entire classes on it. So what I will tell you to do, and I'll post this on D2L, is that search for flex display on Google, and you can read through the first one or the second one. Doesn't really matter which one. And you can read through how it works. The idea is that this will pretty much replace Bootstrap. But the idea is that this will work in multiple screens. And let's go over how it works simply. Let's start off with another new file. We'll call it flex.html. We'll start out with a blank document again. And again, if you feel like you're missing something and it's not working, feel free to put your hand up so we can go check it quickly for you. It's better that we're all on the same page than just like missing a line or two and then can't move on for your benefit. That's probably because you gave it a constant, right? Yeah, because your class is all right. So let's actually try to understand what this whole flex thing is. Just imagine yourself flexing. That's pretty much what it is. So we're going to have an ID. Let's call it flex container, flex cont. And then inside here, we're going to have multiple items. We'll have a div. We'll class it as flex1. Flex1. We'll call it that. Another div, also flex1. And then one for flex2. And then finally, one more flex1. You can write whatever you want. It doesn't matter what you write. This is not like a law that you have to write flex1. You can write bobbly bob for all I care. Make sure they're just like consistent. Bobbly bob, bobbly bob, bobbly goo, bobbly bob, whatever. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And we're going to stylize everything so that it's in a flex display. Flex cont has a flex display, and it's going to have a fixed position just for fun. and it's gonna start at the left of 0 pixel and the top of 0 pixel, and a width of 100 view width. You learn view width? Yes? No? Yes. 100 view width is 100% of your view. So like literally 100% of your view. View height is 100% of your view height. And then we'll have a background color. What's another color you can make a hex code? Who wants to play? We got bad, dad. Huh?
Is mom a color?
No. Why is mom not a color? Because hex code only goes up to A, B, C, D, E, F. Cat is not. Why is that? T is not a hex code. Cab. Okay, let's do cab. I like cab. So it's cab. All right, I'm gonna open the other one. Nice. Flex 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Let's see what happens if we do the following. So we have a little container. Everything's there. You know, make sure everything's actually there. That your div was crossed out the default, and everything is there. Now for flex 1, we're gonna do the following. Flex 1, we're going to associate flex with the number 1. Oh man, rocket science right there. You can guess what flex 2 is. We're gonna flex number 2. And then you can reload. What is going on with this? What is going on right here? Yeah, of course.
So I guess the flex 2 is like a larger width or something like that?
How much larger?
Twice as large?
Twice as large as the flex 1. Is that true when we adjust our browser size? Yes. No matter what size you're in, your flex 2 will always be double the size of your flex 1. Because that's what a flex box is. It will adjust its items based on how much it should flex by their number. So if you're flexing, this is like you're just kind of flexing with really soft power, so your muscles not growing as much. But if you flex with twice the power, your muscles become twice as big, whatever, right? But in the same way, you can change this number. Right? Now it's 4 times. Let's see if we reflect over here. Flex 2 is 4 times as big as anything that is flex 1. And the beauty of it is you can add as much as you want in there. What if I have 4 more flex 1s on there? Then it will readjust itself. This is how big flex 1 will be. And flex 2 will always be 4 times bigger than flex 1. And that is what a flex box is. It will always adjust its own flex because it's flexible. It's always, that's what flex stands for, by the way. It's flexible, that it can adjust itself based on your coordinations. So that's good because let's put it this way. Let's say, what if I want 2 rows of this, right? One of them is like this, but I want 2 rows. So let's first of all, let's get rid of the other for now and leave it back to only 4 items. Is it hard to see the bottom part? I see some of you trying so hard. Okay? You don't have to do this, but I'm just trying to scroll up so that you can see the bottom part. So let's say I want to divide this because I want one row that's like this, and I want another row that's also in a flex box on its own. Right? So let's have a div, call it flex row. Actually, it's not an ID, it's a class. And we're gonna take all 4 flex items over here, and we are going to put it inside the flex row. And you're wondering, oh, how did you just indent everything? You highlight them all and press tab, that's indenting. How do you indent, unindent it the other way? Reverse indent. Do you know? Shift tab, shift tab, tab, shift tab, tab. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna make 2 of them. We're gonna copy the whole flex row and then paste it. So that we have 2 rows. All right. Let's see if we have 2 rows. No, we got nothing. What happened here? What actually happened here? Our flex container has a flex display, but our row doesn't have any flex display. So let's first start with giving our row some flex display. Flex row display flex. Okay. You can see that it has nothing. Our flex row has nothing in there. So of course it's not going to do that. Okay, let's see what happens. Oh, what's wrong right now?
Can't see the flex.
Hmm?
I can't see the flex.
You can't see the flex as well. But it has a display of flex. Oh my. What's going on, right? Well, the first thing is the row itself has no width. So let's give it a width. Let's give it a width of, let's say, 100%. See what happens. Almost there. I mean, what's going on now? This is where you're supposed to learn and be comfortable with your inspect element. You can go bit by bit and go, huh, you know, figure out what is it, what's happening here. It seems like the flex 1 and 2 still applies, that this is still 4 times as big as this one. Now that it has a width, but why is it beside each other? And that's because by default, your flex display puts things beside each other. If you want to put things on top of each other, you gotta change something called the flex direction. By default, everything is beside each other and it's called row. So if I want to change it so that they're on top of each other, it will be column. And now the rows are on top of each other because they're in a flex direction of column. I mean, you can test it like this. Does that really apply? You can try doing the following. What if the second row has a flex 2 here as well? Then you can see the different rows have different flexes of items inside. And to make it a little bit more obvious, perhaps we can add some background color to these flex boxes. Background ground color for flex 1 would be, let's say, bed B, and background color for flex 2 would be add. You can see the different ways it's flexing itself. And it will apply no matter what resolution you're in. And that's why flex boxes are so crucial in the new tech, in the new tech sector, because that means you can make your entire layout based on flex boxes, and it can be on any resolution, and it'll still apply the exact same way, and so on. And that's why they also say it's a bootstrap killer, but we'll see in due time. But moreover, my row doesn't have to be 100%. I can change the row to 80%, or even 70%. Let's make it even smaller. And you can see the flex boxes changes based on the percentage of your row as well. It's very useful in its own way. And if you want to align everything properly, you can say, oh, this is totally misaligned right now. It's all the way over here on the left side. You can go, oh, let's change it up a bit. Let's say every single child. In fact, you know what? I'm going to write some comments here so that we know. Flex start, meaning everything right here, it's flex related. And I go flex end, meaning that's the end of all my flex stuff. You can go, well, the flex no, sorry, not flex. The align items is going to be center, meaning all the child, every single child, all the child inside the flex container is going to be aligned center. So we have two childs in the flex container, flex row number 1 and flex row number 2. So with that, align center, all the child. But also at the same time, you can say justify content, meaning make all the child and center it inside this container, however big this container is. So this container is 100 view width and 100 view height. That means every single child in here will be at the center of this div. And you can test case that. What if the height is 50 view width? It will still be the center of that container over there. What if, so back to 100. And you can test case this by adjusting your browser. It will always stay at that space over there. And so that's the beauty of flex boxes. No matter what kind of resolution, it will flex itself properly based on the requirement you ask its container and its own child to have. Flex box. And the thing is, it doesn't matter what you add inside. Every single child, it's gonna be adjusted into the center. For example, one last thing I'll add in the container is a div. Let's ID it box 1, like so. And we will also style this box 1 with 100 width and 100 height, 100 pixel, 100 pixel, and a background color of, I'm running out of words. What's another word? Bad. Okay. Then you have a little background, it adjusts itself underneath the flex box as the third item in the column. That's aligned into the center. That's aligned into the center and justified into the center, and so on. So if you ever wonder, well, how do these people make like applications that have everything just so neatly aligned to each other? A lot of them uses flex boxes, and in fact, all your mobile applications uses a flex kind of display. You'll notice that when you start scripting on your mobile application, there's always something called flex inside. Like, what the heck is flex? That's what's happening. So that everything looks neatly aligned. But if you position it to something else, for example, if I fix this position right now and have a top of 10 pixel, a right of 10 pixel, then it doesn't matter if it's in a flex box because this child is on its own, going out to the top right. And maybe just we can do it for fun, add some border radius. Do you know what border radius does? Circle. Circle. Oh, what a nice graphic that we made. It's like a pyramid with a moon, but not really. So we'll be exploring more and more different flex boxes, ways of building things through flex boxes. It's an intro to it because we'll also be building our stuff using these style guides. And the difference, again, like I know you probably would have also learned how to generate a default template of some sort, which is also good. But the difference in this course and other courses is that you're not allowed to. So that you know how to modify every little thing on the screen. So that later on, you can use that knowledge and modify someone else's template. Because you know exactly that little piece of the screen is right there, and you gotta modify that little piece for that sake. All right. So that's flex boxes right here. Any questions on this? Anyone need any help on this? Is that a question or any help?
It's just a question.
Okay.
So how is Flexbox a bootstrap there?
Because the reason people use Bootstrap is exactly because of this. If you search for Bootstrap, you'll know Bootstrap. You'll notice that Bootstrap, they have a lot of cool things like themes and whatnot. But realistically, most people use Bootstrap for the following, which is the grid layout. Grid layout. And what it is they have a CSS you have to import. So you have to script your CSS in the beginning. And then use certain classes to make your CSS look like a grid, which is what you see right here, like a grid. You notice the similarity. The difference is that with flex boxes, you don't have to import anything. You don't have to learn their language. You just do it. The only thing going for Bootstrap right now is that they have themes that you can purchase, I guess. There are themes where you have certain things. But realistically, if you know how to do flex boxes and you know how to stylize your own things properly by knowing how to do positioning, then you don't need to go through the whole Bootstrap thing whatsoever. And that's why they're saying that Bootstrap is going to die. But you never know. Technology, they say JavaScript was going to die. And what happens? It became the best thing in the world. So there is that. Bootstrap. Why build anything? Do you see that? All right. Okay, so that's the idea of all the styles at the moment that you want to get a hang of. But more importantly, right now, there are multiple things that you should be aware of yourself as you're typing all this. Number one, it's very important. Do you indent your things properly? Because if you don't indent them properly, your eyes can't see exactly what's going on without refreshing the screen 10 billion times. For example, how do I know that these 4 divs are wrapped inside this div row over here? Well, you can say, of course I can see it. Look, I mean, like there's a div and there's a slash div that's highlighting for me. But like, imagine a whole bunch of divs and you have something like this. What am I looking at here, right? So it's very important because if you don't indent properly, it hurts your eyes. And the more your eyes hurt, the worse you'll do. So right now, for sure, I know everything is contained in my flex container because it's indented properly. Right, make sure you indent things properly. Number 2, recognize the objects on the screen. We didn't just build a circle. We didn't just build a pink circle on the screen. We didn't just build a green stuff with words in there. What we really built is an object that has certain data associated with it. It so happens it looks like a pink circle, but it has the characters 100 pixel associated with it. It has the characters 100px associated with it. It has the characters FAD associated with it. That's the only reason that it's there. If it's not, if these data changes at any point, then that information is gone. It's gonna change completely. So by changing a number, you change the entire look of this item, right? By turning a 0 to a 5, what have I done? Changing the number 0 to a 5. I didn't make it taller. All I did was I changed the number from 0 to a 5. There's a big difference. You might go, oh, of course, that makes sense. But the concept of thought is very different. And also, here's another question for you. How many objects are on the screen right now? On this application, how many objects are there? 2, 3? 10, 12? 1?
0.
Anything that you can highlight is an object on the screen. Starting with right here, HTML. Right, you can highlight that. You can highlight the head. That's an object on the screen, but it's not displayed on the screen. It's an object that's in your document. Object, object. Even the style is an object. Body is an object. Div, div, more divs, more divs. So let's count. How many objects are there on the screen? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 objects on the screen, and that's relevant. And you can also count here as well. You don't have to count up here. You can count here. Anytime you see an open, that's an object on the screen. That's an object on your document, I should say. And this is important for you to grasp, because anything that's an object in your document, it means you can change it. It means you can alter the data associated with this object. As long as it's in the document, you can alter all the data, all the numbers and characters associated with it. And that's where we're gonna start our very first scripting, even though we haven't gotten introduced in the lecture yet. We're gonna start it, not much of an explanation to it. The gist and summary of it today is that you can use your script, and as long as it's an object on the screen, you can alter it. You can rewrite this. So we're gonna start, and we're gonna alter objects on the screen, and that's how dynamic content works. You rewrite these objects over and over and over again to make new objects or new data on the screen. So I'm going to show you two different methods of doing it. One is an older format, the other one is a newer format. I've only taught the older formats to second years. I haven't taught the newer format, so because I want it to be more stable. So you can say, well, when should I use the older format? Well, I can tell you that when you're developing for like Internet Explorer 6 or something like that, you can use the older format. When can you use the newer format? When you're not developing for Internet 6. I don't know, like, but you know, it's more stable in a way. So if you understand the older format, that's good. So let's start with something simple. We're gonna use the older format. Something called document. Document, what is a document? What is this called? It's an HTML document. So what essentially I'm trying to do with my script is I'm going go to the document, find an object on the screen, and change it. And to do something like that, you go document dot, and there's something called get element by ID. Okay, let's take a guess. What's get element by ID? Get the object by its ID. Because how do I know what I'm getting? There's only one way, really. Their ID. Okay, so I'm going to grab the element by its ID. And I want to change this circle here so that it's a little bit wider. What's the ID that I'm grabbing? So we're going to grab it by its ID in a string format, which is the quotation you see over there. Box 1. So this grabs, it goes in the document, grabs an object with the associated ID. It's like, oh, is this box 1? No. Oh, is this box 1? No. Oh, until it finds box 1. What do we want to do it? We're going to overwrite its pre-existing data. So it has a pre-existing data of a 70% width, correct? Now, wait, no, that's not it. With 100 pixel width, right? Now we're going to overwrite it and say we're going to change its pre-existing style data, and we're going to overwrite it and change this number, this set of characters, into 300 pixel. So in the document, I'm going to grab this object on the screen called box1, and I'm going to rewrite or overwrite its pre-existing information from the characters 100px to 300px. And what happens? You can see that the pre-existing information in there is crossed out. Now it's 300px. That's the new item on there. But why don't we see that? Why don't we see it go from 100 to 300? Right? What?
Why do you have to put 300 PS in the string?
Why do I have to put 300px?
In the string.
Oh, that's because I'm replacing the characters over here. Yeah. Later on, you'll get more of a concept. Right now, just think we're replacing the entire character. Because if it's not that'll be next week. You know what? That's a good question. But next week you'll learn about why some things are in strings and some things are not in quotes. Okay. But in any case, for now, we're replacing that set of characters with this set of characters. That's why it's in quotes. So 300, right? the the real question right now is, why do we not see it? Oh crap! Why do we not see it go from a small circle to a wide circle? Well, why do we when we refresh? Why is it just like that? It's because it's too fast. Because the amount of time it takes to generate this replacement, and you can check it over here with like performance of memory or whatnot, is like 0.00001 second or so. Now if you have super laggy internet, like that goes 1 byte per second or something like that, you might be able to observe it going from a little circle to a wider circle. Or if you have a super slow computer that has like prehistoric GPU, CPU, I don't know, you might be able to see it go from that. But right now we can't see it because it goes too fast. But it did do it because, again, we inspected the element and we saw the change right here. Because if it didn't, it would not have crossed out. So the change did happen. We say, go to document, grab this object, and overwrite it. In the same way, I'm going to show you the newer method of doing it. You can go document dot query selector. And query selector is pretty much the same thing, except it goes by a CSS format. So how do I grab an ID in a CSS format? How do I say, hey, I want to change this ID in the CSS? What do I write first? Not style, but what do I do to change something that has an ID in CSS? What do I type first? You're like, is this making the hash, right? So query selector basically goes by CSS format. Box one. That's the difference. They do the same thing, except this one uses a more familiar CSS formatting. It's newer. It may not work on every version of the browser, but definitely ones from 2015 and onward should work on it. Style dot. And this time I'm going to change its background color. And you'll notice when I type background color, it's different from the CSS background color. What's the difference? There's no dash. You can never use that dash in the script. So what happens instead of the dash? Capitalize it. So if I want to change margin bottom, it would be margin, capital B, bottom, right? Same thing here. So I'm going to change it from, I don't even know what it was, fat to red or something like that. Okay, let's see if this went through. And again, how do we know that it actually went through? You look at your inspect and hopefully see that cross mark over there. Because if it's cross, it means you actually took the item and overwrit the data that's inside. Which is good, right? Yeah? Did you?
Yeah. I get the stretch circle on my red.
Only one knows. Does it make sense so far for you? That's what's going on over here, line by line. All right. Now the real question for you again is, what's the purpose of this? This is completely useless, isn't it? Because why didn't I just stylize it in my CSS? Why did I want to even do this? This is totally useless. It has nothing, it has no purpose whatsoever. So what we want to do is give it a purpose of some sort. Maybe we don't want to change it in the beginning. Maybe we want to change these data through the interaction of an hardware. What's a hardware? Oh my. Huh? Anything what?
Tangible.
Tangible? Okay, what's a hardware for my computer? Anything I can touch? All right. So my mouse is a hardware, right? Maybe through my hardware, that's where I change the data inside. What's a simple interaction you use your mouse to do on the screen? Clicking it, right? So we're going to, and there will be more explanation on this during lecture next time, but we're going to make it so that only when we click our mouse will this change. Okay? And not only that, only when we click our mouse on this object on the screen will it change. So first I have to grab the object on the screen so that I can use it to detect the click. So what I'm going to do is the same thing. And I will eventually show you a shorter version of this, but this is the best way to go about detecting a hardware if you're ever going to go into true development, which is something called add event listener. And you'll learn more about this next week, is what your hardware does is it sends messages every time you interact with it. And one of the messages that is sent so happens to be the word click. Believe it or not, when you click on the mouse, your hardware tells your computer click. So this is saying take this object on the screen. Whenever your computer says click and your mouse is on that object over there, do the following. And we'll have more explanation of what these functions are and whatnot in the future. But the following that it will do is line 65 and 66. So we're going to cut that line 65 and 66 and put it inside 68. And again, make sure you tab it properly so that you know that these are the items that comes in. That gets overwritten only when you click on this object on the screen. So let's test this out. Test theory, right? So it goes 300. Only when your hardware interacts with the item that you ask it to go to does it change its data. Watch the bottom right side, right? Because this is its default before the interaction. It overwrites the default after the interaction with something else on there. And that's the idea of what you're doing. It's not just some simple templates or whatnot. Anything that you can have, any object on the screen that you have, you can do something to it. And doing that is up to your creativity on what you want to do with it. Okay, on your own, try to change different stuff aside than width and background color. So you can type more here, more common over here. Type or I say make more changes to different objects on the screen, or the same object, different or same, I should say. Or maybe make other object click and change other objects in the document. Yeah, let's be technical. In the document is more technical, right? So try it out yourself. So there are two traits that you need to have to get through this course. First trait is you want to test the limits. What can be done and what cannot be done. Break your item. So how far can you, like, have you ever thought, hey, how many pixels can I go before it breaks? Have you ever tried that? Do you know how wide and how big your screen can go before your whole screen breaks? That's part of the trait that you should have to test the limit. Number two is to have no fear in typing new scripts out on your own. Yeah, it's gonna break half the time. There's no doubt about that. Have you seen the second years in 113? Like last term, every day is a new swear. Like everyone's just swearing because it's every day there's a new breakage in the bug, and that's gonna be a common thing. Right? What you want to do is to have as much problems as you can, so you can figure out why the problem exists. That's why it's called problem solving. So these are new traits. You can't be scared to type, and you want to test the limits. And if you have questions, feel free to ask. And most of the problem you have in the beginning is probably spelling mistakes, capitalization, and whatnot. For query selector, you use or hash before the box. For query selector, you use so remember CSS format for query selector.
Okay, right.
And you can do classes as well. CSS format. Click on the items. You're missing just That's a good question. You haven't learned. Yeah, that's good. That's the kind of thing you want to test. Is like, how do I do something?
Is it easy to change, or is it all not the
It's easy, but it's not easy to take over. But that's a good question.
My question is, what is it like to use
You could. You could. I'm just showing you that there's this way. This is the old way. This is the new way to be more consistent with CSM. That's all.
what's the best way? So this is the
So this is supported by all browsers. This is supported by newer versions of each browser. So for example, like I said, Microsoft. I mean, Internet Explorer 6 probably the best.
so it's best to use this one,
If you wanted to support super old browsers, yeah. But it will be later on. This would be easier because it has more flexibility. So honestly, like there's no way around that. So, like if you feel like you want to do one of this, go for it. There are a lot of people who still use it to get information because they feel like it's easier for them. There's a lot of people who use the other one because they feel like it's newer. So as long as it's up to you. As long as you know how to use it.
Can you select your class or just watching it and doing it?
All you can do is recommendation. And your guess is not counting. That's not.
So I have to
Do one for box and one.
because when you
Yeah, because you're changing multiple things on the screen at once, right? But if you want this to be quicker, you have to
I have
make
to make it okay.
yeah.
So for example, I will change the lights here.
Mhm.
But for here, can it be change everything at the same time, for example?
I see. So right now you can only change the first flex to you see, right? And the other ones you can. That's a limit that we'll learn in due time. But yes, you can. But in due time, you'll learn how to change all the classes. You always change only the first class. That's a limit to test. Yes. Yes, but what are you actually doing? Class or it only does for the first class, and that's in the middle. We'll eventually learn how to change them all of them. So how do you do? Yeah. If you're not using freeze, you're not using it won't because you're not using. So this is good. This is a little bit more complicated. You can't. Don't want to go too much detail onto that because that's not necessary, but just change the freeze and see. Just do services and do that. Okay. All right. Okay. If you have things that you're working on, comment them out for now, and let's go over the final bits over here. So, of course, we change box 1. But what if I want to do the following? What if I want to make it so that I can click this entire container and change my box 1 back to its original? Then I have to select that entire container, right? And notice that some of you are already going to that limitation. Query selector. So flex container, what is that? That's an ID. Flex cont. Same thing. When I click on the flex container, what I want to do is change my box 1 back to its original. What's the original? Oops, that's not what I want. Original is 100 pixel, and I forgot what it was, like cab or something like that. No, it's not. Dad? Here? What? No. I don't remember. What is the original? Fad, okay. Change it back to fad and change its width to 100 pixel again. Right. So that when I click on it, it changes to 300, but when I click on something else, it changes back to 100 again. And what happens? Does anyone know? It works magically, right? No. Why? What is going on, people?
You wrote query select instead of selector?
Oh, that's right. Very good. I actually missed that too. Okay, what's happening right now? What's going on? Look at the data that's going in. What's going on? On the bottom right side. Try it yourself. What's going on? It got rewritten, but what did it get rewritten with? What's the new data that we wrote inside when I click on my box? What is going on? Oh my gosh. It's crazy, right? Why does it get rewritten with 100 pixel and a background color of RGB 255, whatever, right? The same color as FAD. Why does it do that? I mean, I'm clicking on the box right now. It should rewrite it with 300 pixel in red. Why? This is where your ability to identify the containers and what's inside what is useful. Okay, where is my box located in? Where is my box? It's inside my flex container, right? No? It's inside my flex container. My flex rows are inside my flex container too. My flex 1 are also inside my flex container. So if I'm clicking on box 1, am I also clicking on the flex container at the same time? The answer is yes. I am clicking on the flex container because it's inside. I mean, you can just try it. Take it out, put it outside the flex container. Now it's clickable because it's no longer part of the flex container. That's why the ability to identify your object and its association, back in the lecture, right? Paper, name, and message versus name, message, and paper is very important. You can identify which one is associated to which so that you can change based on the association. So now my flex container has no association with the box, which is why when I click on anywhere else, it changes back to normal. So what does this remind you of? It's like a little menu. You can say like a little navigation menu. You click on it, go to your home page, about page, then go back. It contracts, right? In your mind, when you look at a navigation menu, all you're thinking is, oh, it's expanding. Oh, it's contracting. But they're not really expanding or contracting. What they're really doing is they're changing the numbers and characters into a different set of numbers and characters when you interact with the hardware. A different kind of thought once again. Everything is about numbers and characters digitally. You want to execute an idea, you have to somehow understand the change in numbers and characters that goes on throughout your application. And just to make it a little bit cool and fun, we're going to make it so that box 1 has some transition. Have you learned transition last year? What does transition do? If there is a change over time, if there's a change in a certain style, it will do it over time. So it's like, hey, box 1, if there's ever a change in your width, change it over time by 1 second. If there's ever a change in your height, change it by over 1 second. If there is ever a change in your background color, change it by 1 second, over 1 second. What we can get is a small little expanding, contracting menu. Right. And that's the idea of your application. Yes? Oh, sure. You can do the height as well, just to see the height change if you want. Oh, okay. Great. Dot style. Dot. It's okay. It's common. The first little bit is always spelling mistakes. So there's something wrong with right here. Okay, so I won't go back. But still, so that means is it because it's capital? Yes. I didn't think it would have. Yeah, everything is detailed. All right. So in the beginning, a lot of your problems comes up with spelling mistakes. You'll notice that. And the only way to get through spelling mistakes is repetition. That you remember spelling mistakes, capitalization, just the inconsistent between what you wrote over there. So there are 3 things that you have to work on throughout. And I strongly encourage you, no matter what happens, work on it. Which is indent your things properly. So you know which is part of which. Because with this, you know that the change is part of a click for box 1. With this, you know that the change is associated with the click of box 2 because they're indented properly. They're wrapping each other up properly. The more organized you are with the indentation, the better off. I mean, would you rather waste your brain power in figuring out what this line is doing or where it's located? Or would you waste it on trying to find other means, right? So that's something that can easily be fixed if you indent things properly. Spelling is something that cannot be easily fixed. It's just repetition, repetition, repetition. After a while, you'll get used to it. And finally, just the ability to figure out what are the objects on the screen and what exactly you're changing. That's always a good thing, that you understand every single line and what it's trying to do. Okay, that's pretty much for today. Let's go over some logistics before we go back. So you notice sometimes I go super fast. It's like I already mentioned it. Command D is to duplicate lines. So sometimes you see me go like this. I'm doing Command D. Okay. Tab. You can tab everything at the same time by highlighting them and tab it. Shift tab is the other way. All right. So that's pretty simple as well. Other things, and I would strongly suggest that you do it all the time, is Command S. What's Command S? Does anyone know? All right. It's not a joke. All right. There are many instances where people cry because they didn't save a file. And there are many instances where people don't know what's wrong because they didn't save a file. Every time you type something, Command S and spam it as much as you can. Also, last little bits over here. If you didn't save a file, it shows on the left side. There's a dot there. That means that file was changed and it wasn't saved. So make sure you save it. Command Z is to undo. Command Shift Z is to redo. Also very useful. All right. So these are small logistics on there that you want to get used to. Finally, there's a tutorial due next week that will be posted up today. I know, right? First week? What? No. Any questions on this? If not, then I'll see you next week.